not least, here we go. We're going to work on our tote bag. So just as in the other videos, I went ahead and pre-did my paths. I do really like to separate my paths because you never know when you're going to want to apply perhaps different effects or different elements to your path. So there are two straps here, so we kind of have a front strap and a back strap. So I did go ahead and adjust those. You're welcome to, again, that's just kind of something I like to do from the beginning instead of going backwards later. So again, jumping over to my pattern. Just going to go ahead and grab one of these. Again, that's why we have these all, and we can go ahead and start applying our pattern. So I'm just going to, like you know, or have seen, I'm going to paste that in as the smart object. That looks to be a bit large for my liking. Again, there's no real right or wrong, but we are designers, so we always want to make sure that we do get the best sizing and the best effect for realism and down the line for your client. So I'm going to go ahead and command click on that tote bag. Use my selection error to feather that out a little bit. 1 pixel, I find the resolution of 1 pixel is pretty good here. You could probably go 2 pixels as well, but that's where we get to zoom in and, you know, just take a look at your edges. So you could see that that's been feathered fairly, you know, quite a bit for this instance. From a distance, it looks quite good. So again, nice easy root out. I'm just going to go ahead and apply that multiply to it. So that's where we can pick up all of our shadows. You could maybe drop that resolution down ever so slightly, or sorry, the opacity down ever so slightly, just to get a little more realism. And then, you know, what about our straps? Are we going to apply the pattern to our straps, which isn't always necessary? Maybe we want to, you know, maybe add some color to them. So that's where I'm going to just command shift, and I'm actually just going to grab both the front and the back. I'm going to add another layer. Use my eyedrop tool, and I'm just going to bring this all the way up. Use my eyedrop tool and pick up that green color. Feather this out again a little bit just so it matches the feathering from the rest of the bag, and then option delete to fill it with the front color or the foreground color, and again add that multiply, and we're looking pretty good. I kind of like the way that looks as is. But now there's some other things that we can do. So again, maybe I'm looking and I think my pattern's a bit too large, so I'm just going to unlink that, grab that pattern layer, command T, and then oops, making sure we use our shift, and then we're going to scale it down. When we get into areas down here where that pattern would technically warp a little bit, you guys could go through or could go in and adjust that. You know, I'm using your warp tools. I'll do that real quick now. But again, using our warp tools, we can't have a smart. So we always want to make sure we keep that original, because I always like to keep that smart graphic in there. And I'm just going to right click and rasterize. So I'm going to go in command T, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to warp. So I'm not sure if you guys use or have used this too much or recently. So they did change this. So now you get to decide where exactly you want your splits to be. So if I want to adjust my split over along this seam, I'm just going to use my horizontal split, and I'm just going to use this as my start point. I'm just going to put a little click there. Now I can go ahead, and this just essentially centralizes that area. So now if I'm going to go and imagining how this bag is going to warp, whoops, that's maybe a bit too much. And then this is where you're like, okay, I'd like to maybe add another one in there. So we can adjust our pattern a little bit more and maybe just warp that base a little bit out. I'm not sure if you heard that, my dog making a big loud groan there. So we do have a little bit more of a warp. Just going to press enter. And now we have a little more realism on that. So just to kind of give a perspective. So that's where we were before, and that's where we're at now. So again, that's kind of getting a little technical in there. I'm not going to expect everyone to go ahead and do that, but it's all up to you and how much you want to include for your client. So I'm pretty happy with this. I do find that my straps are looking a little bit flat, so I'm going to go ahead, making sure I select that later. So I'm going to go ahead and go onto this later. I'm going to go layer style, just as I did before. I'm going to go pattern overlay. Fabric's real easy though. So now we can zoom in. And now we can kind of get different grain patterns in here. So we can go ahead and look at this. So I think that's looking fairly close to the pattern we have here. Again, you're welcome to go ahead and play a little bit more. Maybe we want that to be scaled up a little bit. I don't really like the way that looks. You know, bringing the opacity of that pattern up a little bit. Press OK. So I now immediately think that that actually does create a little bit more texture in there, and you can double click and you can maybe view it from afar now, and maybe you're thinking, oh, I kind of want to add a little bit more, maybe not so much, etc. So it's all up to you guys. Change your blending mode as well to decide how much you do or do not want to include in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and press OK. So now on our tote bag, what do we usually have on our tote bags, which is a logo. So you can decide maybe you want it central, maybe into the bottom corner. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to call this logo. I'm actually going to create a whole folder. So I'm going to use my circle tool. I'm just going to pop. Using that same green color, I'm going to fill that in. And again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, where am I, layer style? And I'm going to add a little bit of a pattern in there just to add a little bit of realism to that. Just going to go ahead and play with those patterns a little bit more. See what they look like. That's looking pretty good actually. Adding a little more depth in there and press OK. So now I'm going to go over to my Illustrator file. I'm going to decide to use this beige logo version. I'm going to copy and again paste it in there, Smart Objects, so you can scale up or down on that depending what works for you. I'm just going to go ahead and size that inside of here, maybe a little bit smaller. And then I'll just center those up and then see how that looks. So I'm kind of liking the way that looks. Again, perhaps maybe adding a little bit of that pattern that we have on our background circle, adding it to here so we can just nice and easy go over to our pattern and we go copy layer style and paste layer style. So now that same pattern has been applied to there. Perhaps maybe it's a bit too bold on this one, but we can drop that opacity down. We can drop the scale down, etc. So now everything somewhat has that same look and feel. Again, I do like bringing that opacity back down a little bit just to, I just find that gives a little bit of realism. This one, I'm going to bring that down, but now I'm also going to, so if I bring that opacity down too much, I'm going to start to see that pattern through there, which we don't want. So I'm going to knock this little circle out of our vector. So I'm just going to do that. Again, naming our files. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to bring that back up. Now I don't have anything in the way. Maybe add a multiply on there so we can pick up the shadows from our bag. And that's giving some realism to that. Again, sure we could spend a heck of a lot more time adding more elements to this, but I think at this stage of the game, oh, my guides seem to be locked on here. There it goes. At this stage of the game, I think this is looking pretty good. So good luck and have some fun with yours. adding maybe some extra shadows, doing what you'd like to do for yourself and for your pattern and for your client.